Let's take a look at some Milo Manara. I've been plowing through a lot of Manara volumes that I've never read before. And as I continue reading through this opera series, the ones that I'm at right now are with I think it may be the largest series of stories that Manara did or has done ever, featuring the character Giuseppe Bergman, who, let's see, is... These are the complete volumes. So it began in 1978, then 1980 there was one, then 82. Then there was a bit of a gap till 1988. Then there was a larger gap till 99, and then 2004, and that's the last one. And let me just tell you overall, my brief thoughts is that the first kind of batch was better than the last two. I feel like the last two are a little weaker. Let's see why. I kind of have ideas why, but I also kind of don't. Like, there's some issues with, like, it seems like it should work, but for whatever reason, it doesn't work as well for me. Okay, so where do we begin with Giuseppe Bergman? Where's the first volume? That would be this. Where is it? Oh, no, this isn't not it. It's volume, do I have it on here? Oh, here we are. Okay, so this one, HP and Giuseppe Bergman. HP is Hugo Pratt. I don't know if they ever say his full name. I can't remember. But, you know, he was a big artistic influence on Manara, I guess. So he will show up. And Giuseppe Bergman, I'm told, is modeled on Milo Manara as a character, but it's kind of like a fantasy character of Manara as the artist, but also all the adventures that he has within his head. So So jump back with me in time to 1978 to the first adventure with Giuseppe Bergman, and it's right away, like, it's very breaking the fourth wall, talking to the reader, being aware of the adventures that he's in. And I love the art though right away. I mean, this is, to me, this is prime Manara. Like, I love this style of art. And so he kind of begins like in like an apartment, living normally, and then he just steps out and he seems to, like, fantasy begins and all kinds of stuff. The adventures. He's looking for an adventure, and somehow he ends up like. I mean, this feels very like it could have came out in the '60s. It was reminding me a lot of two of my favorite, I guess, literary characters. One, Candide. I did a recent look at, well, not recent. In the last few months, I looked at one of the adaptations of Candide. I still have one more I should get around to soon. But that Candide as a character is like he just bounces all over the world doing whatever and just kind of surviving. And I feel like I see a lot of that in Giuseppe Bergman. Like he's trying to find happiness and some kind of balance, but he wanders around. It's very much of the kind of the revolutionary spirit of he picks up like a cop and a protester and they fight in the back of his car. It's just like really zany, and I enjoyed it. Like, though I really like these early ones because it's just like you feel like anything could happen. So this is Hugo Pratt, or HP, and I don't know who all these other characters are, just kind of fantasy adventure characters that Manara has lived through, I guess. Oh, and the other literary character I was mentioning that this reminds me of is Jerry Cornelius, Michael Moorcock's book. Another similarity, though, to Cornelius is that the first batch of stories and books, the main quartet and the original short stories, I think are much stronger. I feel like he should have ended it in 1977 with The Condition of Muzak. Instead, he kept going with it, and the later books are not nearly as interesting. There was a good spin-off book, though, the Catherine Cornelius and Una Person. I like that one. So, anyways, somehow Giuseppe Bergman ends up like in South America. I don't know how he gets there, and there's there's always sexy women in Manara books and adventures. The adventure though is like you keep getting hints of adventure and how things could be developing, but you feel like there's a lot of red herrings, and it never goes where you expect it. And then he ends up with this tribe. Okay, pages like this though are so, to me, they're so psychedelic, 1960s, very kind of like Zap comics. And before I read a lot of Manara, I never would have expected that in his books from what I'd read before. So I think, to me, that's why these early ones I think are so surprising and wonderful, and just packed with strange, dreamy imagery and wonderful panels like this. Look at this, just so simple and beautifully hatching. Is that what it's called? Hatching, yeah. Wonderful stuff. He ends up. This is very Candide, like in that he's a lot of like bad things kind of happen to him, but he somehow survives and floats along. He does they shoot some drugs up his nose, and he flips out, and he has this wonderful sequence. It's just like so. I mean, I love this kind of stuff. I know everyone's not going to like this kind of stuff, but to me, it's just so weird and off the wall and unexpected and fascinating. Like this, I want this to have this as a poster in my bathroom or somewhere, because it's just wonderful. Yeah, these kind of pages are just very, kind of remind me a little too of like Jim Steranko's Nick Fury stories in the late 60s. Yeah, so there's all this stuff, and he's with this tribe. And again, I've called this out before. That his influence by Carlos Castaneda is very apparent. So, anyways, I'm not going to go through this whole one individually, page by page. I'm going to jump ahead a little, see if I can find the next story. So it ends though in this very kind of funny way. He ends up in Venice. Oh wait, I don't know if that was the end. Yeah, he ends up in Venice, and he meets HP again, Hugo Pratt, and Hugo Pratt's collecting he's on the dole and collecting Social Security benefits or something, and Manara's kind of disillusioned by that. But then we have this harking back to this kind of dreamlike demon imagery that we saw earlier in the book, and it's just such a weird, unusual ending. I loved it. And then at the back of these, we have like a portfolio of some wonderful images. So I do like these operae. I think they're nice. They have a lot of nice essays and a lot of bonus material and stuff. So the only kind of thing that I was kind of confused by is like, why do they don't print all the books in order? Instead, they kind of jump around. And so anyways, the next one, let's see, the next one in order should be An Author in Search of Six Characters, Un autore in cerca di sei personaggi, and then Dies Irae. But I think they weren't published that way in this series. But anyways, that's the one I'm going to go to next. Where is it? Oh, yeah. So this one again is the early ones that came out like in 80 and 82, and I think these first three are really the best. They're it's like still very uncertain what this character is and how he's supposed to operate, and it's it's wonderful stuff. And also in this, they're all prefaced with these chapter headings with these characters, and I think this is just such a perfect example of how Manara is just such a master of this space between, or this, on the spectrum of cartooniness and realism. He's like right on the border of he can waver into each one perfectly well, and these people lining up is just a great example of that. So it begins. I don't know how it begins. There's one thing about these is also similar to Jerry Cornelius is that Giuseppe Bergman, even though the books are kind of titled after him and he's sort of the main character, sometimes he barely even shows up. And sometimes like 10 pages will go by without him. And all these other characters are followed. But with this one, he does show up pretty early. And some character quits and decides to, this is a reference, this one, An Author in Search of Six Characters is a reference to, what's the Italian play called? An Author in Search of, or no, Six Characters in Search of an Author, whatever it's called. And like that, it really breaks. I mean, this one breaks the fourth wall even more. There's like casting and there's also the sense of brutality and sense of like people being forced into dangerous situations and of course a Manara woman that has to lose a lot of her clothing at different points. But as you can see, Manara's art here is just wonderful. And yeah, so this one I enjoyed as well. I just felt like a few times, like at the beginning, maybe when they were talking about getting the story started, it kind of slowed down a little. It could have begun a little faster, but I did enjoy this one quite a bit. And it has some trippy psychedelic moments as well. Pages like this where these crowd scenes and it's like you're barely even kind of certain what this all means and what it's happening, but it still is being driven towards, there's this guy beating this drum and driving all these people into this deep hole so they fall into like hell or something. But I just love how Manara draws, like, look at all this line work and this hatching and cross hatching. So good. That's why, like, in one of the later volumes, he switches to a watercolor style that I didn't like as much. I just love his, and he switches to cartooniness. Brilliant stuff. And I love this panel too, this page, because like the panel gets smaller and smaller until it gets like, there's just like hundreds of tiny little panels. It's like fractalizing or whatever. And he jumps through all these different art styles. I can't remember if this is the one where I think it's a later volume where he kind of references all of these different famous art styles and artists. There's a lot of like characters that are kind of vaguely likable. I think the main character, Giuseppe Bergman's pretty likable, but all the other characters feel kind of flimsier and more disposable, and Manara's not afraid to torture and destroy them. What is this? Oh yeah, like, so this is like just such a, I mean, this is a book for artists in a lot of senses. All right, let's see where, I forget where the next book begins. Now look at this though. Yeah, there's a lot of references to like cave paintings and jumping into that style, but always returning back to the standard Manara style. All right. And then, what is this? I mean, pages like this must take forever to do. Stuff like this, where he does this in another later volume with this giant wave, where it's one large image, but it's broken down into different panels. All right, and then we get another portfolio at the back. I'm not gonna look at this too much. Okay, so that was an author in search of six characters and Desiree. I don't know where the two began. For me, like, I didn't even realize it as I was reading this that there were two stories. They kind of really bleed into each other. So that kind of ends the first wave, and then we have like 6 or 7 years until the next one, which was Son, what is it called? Sognare Forse, so perchance to dream. And I don't remember which one this is. Let's see. Oh, this is the one where they go. So it begins in Venice, I think. Yeah, and there's this woman who's kind of heading towards India. And I think if I remember correctly, Manara did some kind of a trip like this. And then within it, there's this kind of wonderful Prince Valiant pastiche that every now and then it'll show up on TV, and they're filming this movie. And then this is the one where 10 pages pass before we actually see Giuseppe Bergman. He's just one of the crew on the camera, or he's the driver, I think, as they're heading towards India. And yeah, I like this one too. It was unexpected. Oh, this is the one where all the artists. So yeah, like they'll show something like this, and then it'll launch into these previous styles of art. And all this, like Manara basically just trying on all these different art styles, and Giuseppe Bergman just kind of gets lost through it all. Okay, some of this though, like it's pretty gratuitously Manara going out of his way to show off women naked and stuff, and it's a little ridiculous sometimes, but I don't know, I can kind of play along with it in the interest of storytelling, or in the interest of like just the ridiculous storytelling aspects. There's this like Indian guy with an umbrella who just kind of follows her around, and then it all kind of wraps up. The Prince Valiant storyline wraps up. This looks like there's a bit of watercolor in here too. I didn't realize that. So many like dream imagery though that you're like, what is it all going towards? And then it ends with this atomic bomb, because there's this atomic bomb subplot that I barely followed. And at the end, when wait, there's one point. Oh no, it's a different book where some woman, like her crotch basically lands on the guy's mouth. It's just ridiculous. So anyways, Sognare Forse is pretty good. I feel like that was, just basically slightly different, because at that point, it'd been like 10 years since Manara had introduced Giuseppe Bergman. So at that point, you're able to kind of look back on your work and see it as something that is almost done by someone else. So anyways, we jump ahead to the final volumes, Rivedere le Stelle and the Odyssey of Bergman. So the Rivedere le Stelle is the one that's done in watercolor. And this one, I would say, is my least favorite. Just because, one, it looks a lot different. But that's not always bad. But it just feels like the storyline, there's this woman, of course, a sexy Manara woman, who has this art book, and she's kind of has this psychological thing where she has to play out the roles of the people in the art in the paintings. I noticed this one painting I'd never seen before, but I actually used in one of my music videos for what was it called, the Ballad of Percy O'Reilly. There's a Japanese like beer commercial or something where a woman does this exact same pose, and I didn't realize it was referencing this painting, which I'd never seen before. So anyways, I learned that little fact. But other than that, Manara, or Giuseppe Bergman's basically trying to protect this woman. There's like, roguish guys trying to take advantage of her. They go to jail. Overall, though, this story just didn't really interest me, and I feel like Giuseppe Bergman felt a little more responsible and less prone to falling into fantasy realms than usual. It just felt a little too, I don't know, it was a different era in 1998, and it just doesn't work as well. Although we do get HP coming back at the end, and yeah. So, anyways, that one didn't do much for me. Then, fortunately, I think he returns to his penciling style, which I prefer, as I said. And there's this. It begins with Giuseppe Bergman lost in the ocean. There's this shark following them, and then he gets rescued by this chick, and there's basically the Odyssey is the frame for this one, and the Odyssey is a story I've covered a lot on my channel because of Ulysses, my Ulysses course. Go check it out. But this, I feel like this would have been better as a straight up Odyssey adaptation instead of this kind of thing in the modern sense where there's like a vague storyline connecting it to the Odyssey. Then there's like all these biker gangs, and that part of it just didn't really interest me, and it felt kind of corny. And yeah, the art, of course, this Manara's art is always wonderful, even in the watercolor section. But it's really the story in this one that doesn't work for me. I mean, actually, I liked, like I said, I liked the Odyssey parts. I just wanted a straight up adaptation of that. Could have even done like the whole thing with Giuseppe Bergman as Odysseus or something, but instead, the only parts I kind of liked were these launching into like all the warriors of history that have been killed throughout history. It did feel though like a little preachy, like in the way that saying like all the like basically everything, all the humans that we could have been doing better things and so on. And it's like, okay, I didn't feel like this level of preachiness was found in the earlier books. I felt like the criticism of like both war and the protesters at the same time was a little more subtle in the earlier books. Yeah. So, anyways, that's a wrap on Giuseppe Bergman. Like I said, I prefer the earlier volumes, but I'm glad I read the later ones. They just didn't do as much for me. I think next volume that I'm looking at will be El Gaucho, which is another. Oh no, maybe not El Gaucho. Maybe there's something else. No, I think it is El Gaucho. Okay, and that's another Hugo Pratt one adaptation, or Hugo Pratt's the writer and Manara does the art. So I'm looking forward to that. See you there, and in future Design Lab videos. Bye.